we have remained a democracy, and that's no mean achievement considering we have 1 billion people. We held elections regularly except for a brief period during the emergency when our constitution, fundamental rights were suspended. But we have demonstrated to the world that democracy is part and parcel of our society, whereas in other countries, especially our neighborhood, which is also supposed to have the same history as ours, they have not been able to have democracy. And I certainly think that the main reason we have democracy in India is because we are 83% Hindu, and it's a Hindu ethos which is very conducive for questioning, for decentralization, for doing your own thing and having your own opinion. And this ethos has contributed very heavily for the fruits that democracy has in India. And it is this Hindu religion, culture that we need to defend, because if it disappears, there will be no democracy in India. To Richard Nixon, India has not broken, and India has remained one, and this is also a great achievement. And this also I attribute to the common cultural links that Hindu society, Hindu religion has been able to afford. And finally, we have demonstrated leadership in information technology, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals. India is a growing country, and so there's much to celebrate. But there's also hemorrhaging going on. And I would like to speak to you today. This is an Indian audience. I would like to speak to you about the hemorrhaging that is going on in India. Because praising ourselves amongst ourselves is not necessary. And the hemorrhaging has taken in the form of the Hindu society being under siege. Hindu society is now, but for a problem I had with Mrs. Indira Gandhi. I was a professor, I was a junior professor at Harvard, I became an assistant professor, associate professor. Then the Indian Institute of Technology offered me a full professorship at a very young age, 29, which is unprecedented in India. And I accepted it and went back to India. But very soon I found that the ideology that Mrs. Gandhi was propagating was the Soviet, pro-Soviet ideology. And India needed, according to me, a market economy. And I recall that I had seen that picture in the room of one of the Indian students who had invited me to his place for lunch. As a professor, in America it's very common for professors to go for lunch with students. And I remember that photograph. So it was in my mind that someday I must go and see Paramacharya. And it happened in 1977 election. There was a Tamil Nadu election for the assembly after the parliament election in which Janata Party came to power. And I am now the sole surviving founding member of the Janata Party because everybody else left it. I am the only one who has not left it. And but I remember that I was campaigning and I was passing through Kanchipuram, and there was a crowd. It was not in the Kanchi Mutt, but it was in a village a little away, maybe 20 kilometers away. And there was a small hut and there was a big crowd, lots of cars. So I asked my people, what's going on here? Then they gave me the name. They said, Paramacharya is here. That's why everybody's here. So I said, oh, then I want to see you. And I went to the hut where he was sitting. And I appeared just like that. There were other people also standing. And then he looked at me and he got up and went inside. So I didn't know, something about me must have upset him. That's why he went inside. So I started to leave. Who were looking after Paramacharya came running, said, Perivar on the Kupudra. So I went back So he asked me, how did you leave without, he asked me in Tamil, so I saw you, you saw me and you went inside, so I thought you didn't want to see me. So therefore I decided to leave. No, I went inside to get this piece of paper. And he gave it to somebody, he gave it to me. I opened it and it was a question answer with my photograph in. Those days there was an Indian Express magazine called Dinamani Kadir or something. I forget what it was. And the question was that Subramanian Swamy is regarded as a hero of emergency. Is he a Tamilian? So the answer is yes, he is from Sholo, so it's from Tamil Nadu. He's from Tamil Nadu. So he asked me, Nidane is it? So I said yes. Then he said, now you can go. First meeting. And second meeting happened after about a year, pretty away, and spent at least an hour and a half with me, speaking about everything political. But he made it clear that he normally doesn't speak politics. And but he's making an exception. And I took that to mean that I should not give it in the newspapers as many others were doing. And he traced the whole Indian history so magnificently for me in a short while. He even explained to me that we should oppose E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar at the brain level, he said, not physically. Because he is one man and he has turned, he is so he told me, your job is to work on ideas in politics. And you do what you think is right. Don't chase position, don't chase money. When it's required, both will come. I must say, when people said that I dare to stand, I dare to speak, it's that original inspiration which is guiding me. Because I found when I've been in difficulty, money has come. I found when everybody had written my career off, I became a minister. So, therefore, there is that, obviously, is the blessings in this background. And therefore, over the years, I had been interacting with them. So today, when I speak to you about the Hindus under siege, many of these problems he had told me much earlier. And said sometime or the other it will come. So one of them was conversion, which we didn't take very seriously. Today it's a very serious problem. The other is terrorism, which is also directed against Hindus only. Only Hindus die in a terrorist attack. Religious conversion, only Hindus are getting converted. Nobody else is getting converted. If you look at the ravishing of Hindu icons, it is the Hindu icons who are getting ravished. The arrest of Swami Jayendra Saraswati is taken place only because he happens to be a Hindu Swamiji. And obviously the reason was that he was going amongst the Dalits and he was a challenge to the conversion forces, and they worked through Jayalalitha and got it done. And Jayalalitha was a willing tool for that. I hope she regrets it someday and does proper prayaschit for it. But the fact of the matter is that also, look at the history book distortion. Look at what is happening in the United States. Recently there's a book now, I think 2 days today, in which we are hemorrhaging. We are definitely hemorrhaging on terrorism. We are definitely hemorrhaging, the Hindu society is hemorrhaging on conversion. We are hemorrhaging in the fact that the propagation is taking place against Hindu religion in a very insidious way. It is the attack against this Hindu religion. Even the globalization, as it gets translated in India, it's attacking Hindu institutions. The family is a very important institution as a shock absorber where a country doesn't have social security. But the globalization is increasingly putting pressure on nuclear families. Nuclear families are a disaster. They haven't worked in the United States. And Certainly in the United States with all the social security can perhaps even have it. But India with no social security cannot go for nuclear families. So these, I was taken aback that you should be asking me this question all of a sudden. So I said, they have come to Afghanistan, tomorrow they will come to Pakistan, then they will come to India. That is their pattern. No, don't waste your time on Soviet Union. It will be finished. It will break up. 1980, at the peak of Soviet power. I would say, I said, I can't believe that, I couldn't say to him. I said to myself, is he saying? And that's exactly what happened. The Soviet Union broke up into 16 countries, become irrelevant. It doesn't exist anymore. As I told Nambudripad that for years you've been saying there's no inflation in Soviet Union, there's no unemployment in Soviet Union, there's no poverty in Soviet Union, now there's no Soviet Union also. You see? So, here is, the perspective that I got. Then I said, then what should I do? So he said, India needs only two friends, China and Israel. And we were having the worst possible relations with both at that time, when he told me this. He told me this in 1977, that India needs only two friends, China and Israel. And so I said, Israel, the country doesn't even recognize Israel. They won't even give me a passport to go to Israel. How I can develop relations? They said, no. That's all he would say to me. But every time I came, he would ask me, have you done anything about Israel? Have you done anything about Israel? And China. I said, China, they have taken away our territory. They are our enemies. How can we have it? No. You need them. You must know when to make friends and when to make allies. So I thought, how do I know when to make friends and when to make allies? So he says, Vishmacharya per get kiya. In fact, I was brought up in the north, so I didn't know much Tamil. In fact, I could hardly speak Tamil. So he used to appreciate, he never spoke to me in anything except Tamil. But he said, one day he will start speaking in public meetings in Tamil. Nowadays I speak in public meetings in Tamil. My own style of Tamil is different from the Dravidian Tamil. But everybody understands my Tamil, nobody understands Karunanidhi's Tamil. With China you have to do. Then, of course, I happen to be an expert on China, I speak Chinese. So I made a contact with them. And soon, out of the blue, to the surprise of everybody, the Chinese invited me to visit China. Then Morarji Desai trade of course to China. So I was wondering how I could go. I was an MP of his party. He was the Prime Minister. So I met Morarji. He says, Chinese? How can you go and have any dealings with them? They are enemies. So I come back, before I go further on that, I asked Parmacharya, how do I decide who should be friended and who should be opposed? So he said, Bhishmacharya had given an upadesh to Arjuna. And after the battle was over. And he cited a story about a rat and a cat. He said those two can never get together. But there was a rat who was living in a hole and he couldn't come out and play because the cat was sitting on the top of the tree watching for it to come out so it could pounce and eat it. So the rat was very unhappy. One day he found the rat shrieking. So he came out and looked and he saw that a hunter had put some net and the cat had walked into it. And the net was, that's an old hunter's method of catching animals. And the hunter, the net had gone up and it was suspended from a tree. So the rat was very pleased and started dancing around, moving around, having the fresh air which it could never have, till a snake came. And now the rat was too far away from the hole to go back running. The snake would have pounced on it. So he didn't know what to do. So he proposed to the cat that, see, you are stuck there and you can't get out, but I have sharp teeth, I can cut the net. And I have this problem with the snake. I will come and jump into your net, and you must shriek in such a way that the snake gets afraid and runs away and save me. And then I will cut the net and let you free. So cat said, definitely, deal made. So the rat jumped into the net, and then the cat shrieked and the snake went away. So now he said, now please open the net. So the rat slowly started cutting. The cat said, what are you doing so slowly? You can do much faster. There, the hunter will soon come. He said, no, I'm doing my best, I'm doing it. So it delayed, till the hunter started coming. That time the rat quickly bit the net ropes, and the net broke loose, and the rat jumped out, and the cat also went and climbed up the tree. So the hunter came, he saw the net is in this state, he didn't know what to do, just picked up the net and went away. And then the rat came and peeked out again, and the cat said, why did you take so much time? You broke an agreement with me. The rat said, I knew that if I had cut the net immediately, the first thing you would have done is eaten me up, because that's your nature. So I had to wait till you found another danger before you. So therefore, never make an alliance with a person whom you are doubtful about, unless you are sure there is an escape route also. That he can, without you, could face a bigger danger. So that philosophy you should follow. You have to make alliances. And he said, with China also, you have alliance. You make an alliance with China, but always keep some door open. Somewhere China might be afraid of some other country. At that time, it was Soviet Union. So keep a balance, he said, because now it will be United States. So he said, with that in mind, you forget about all this border and all that. You can take care of itself. You make up with them. They will make up with you. So as his blessings was there, I told the Chinese embassy I would, like to meet the ambassador. The ambassador, first thing he did was call me, because nobody was used to visit, and that too a member of parliament. I was general secretary of the party at that time, and so they immediately invited me and said, we would like you to visit China. Kailash Mansaram, go and see it also. But the Chinese that time had shut the place out. They wouldn't allow anyone to go. But I was received by Deng Xiaoping, their biggest leader, and I proposed to him, to his credit. Deng Xiaoping said there are some roads which have to be developed, etc. For 35 years nobody has gone. So I'll get it all done. And if your people want to build a temple also, I will allow that. All this I just couldn't believe. But for Paramacharya it couldn't have been possible. But he said one condition. You must go first to Kailash and Mansarovar. Now I have never walked more than 1 kilometer in those days. I used to lead a typical urbanite existence. Because nowadays I walk quite a lot. But those days I had hardly walked, and certainly not up a mountain. I had to go 22,000 feet up and then cross into Tibet. And so everybody dissuaded me when it was clear that Kailash Mansarovar will be open. But I had given this promise that I would be the first one to go. So everyone persuaded me, why are you doing this? You will fall off the cliff, you will die, the people go there to die, you don't do it. Finally I went again to him. He said, and indeed I went, it was a hard job, but I had no incidents. Went and saw Kailash and Mansarovar. I had a bath in Mansarovar. And since then every year 500 people are going. That got it open. I would have never thought about it. And I never would have believed that the communists would do it. In fact, that time Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the foreign minister. He told me, "You're spoiling our relations with the developing relations with China now. First you go and open it, and then after that you want them to do things which are religion. They are communists. They will take it ill and so on." But Moraji told me, "Don't worry, you raise the matter." So, like that, throughout there has been this kind of guidance. And today what I'm going to speak to you is part of the perspective that he gave me, Paramacharya gave me in politics. I know very well that this is what will happen, because one day I was stuck in near Vellore with a flat tire, wondering what to do, because there is nobody around. Suddenly I find from Kanchipuram one car coming. And they came with a mechanic, they fixed my car. So I said, "How did you know?" So Paramacharya said, "Swami, tire picture right there. So he drove the people. So that kind of backing I remember that when the Janata Party was broken by VP Singh, I didn't join VP Singh. Everybody thought I was mad, because that's where everybody went. But he told me, "You've done the right thing." And then he told me, "You come for my birthday celebration." It was in May 1990. 95th birthday, I think. Something like 95th birthday. And he put me on the same stage as Rajiv Gandhi. In the invitation also, the two names are there in one of the programs we will address. And he said, "You and he are going to be together." And Rajiv and I we were already known to each other, but became like brothers, very, very close friends. Then he was assassinated. So I told him, "This horrible thing has happened. I need to do something about this Prabhakar, who's ordered the assassination." What is the proof? Kashmir, majority Muslim. What happened to the Hindus there? Driven out. They're living in refugee camps, terrible, squalid refugee camps. Take the case of Mau, a district in UP, 65% Muslim. What's happened to the Hindus there? They cannot celebrate Diwali, they cannot celebrate Ramayana. They cannot have Bharat Milap broadcast on microphone. This is reality. In Tamil Nadu, there are 40 town panchayats. There is one called Mel Visharam near Vellore. There people came to me. Vishwa Parishad actually also took me there. And there I heard a shocking story. I never thought it would happen in India. 75% of Mel Visharam is Muslim. 25% is Hindu. Town Panchayat election, 100% seats went to Muslim. And the Muslim, after getting elected, told the Hindus, "You want any amenities? Convert. Otherwise, no amenities." And literally, if you go there, Muslim area, fully developed, with all the amenities. Hindu area, total barren, no roads, no schools, nothing. In fact, their agriculture has been ruined because the Muslims had set up tannery factories, and the polluted water came for irrigation and destroyed the crops. So I asked the people, "What do you want?" They said either they should give us amenities or they should partition the town panchayat. So I went to court, and I was able to get a court order that the governor should look into these complaints. And the governor, Sujit Singh Banala, who was known to me, he told me that either it will be partition or the amenities will be. But there are 40 such town panchayats. Wherever Muslims are in majority, there is no secularism. Majority, you will see how the Hindus live there. You have to visit it to know. There's another place near Rameshwaram called Tondi. 40 such places are there, all over the country, because their religion is very clear. Your identity is transnational, and your purpose in life is to promote Islam. If you are Darul Islam, that is, if Muslims are in power, then your job is to convert the remaining, otherwise reduce them to what they call as dhimmi status, or make them, declare them kafir and kill. Dhimmi status means you do menial work. So their concepts are very clear. Our problem is, we think we are good Hindus if we go to temples, celebrate Diwali, and do puja at home. That is not enough. What we need is a Hindu mindset, which means that not only we will do all this, do puja, we will go to temples, we will celebrate Diwali, but when Hindus are in trouble anywhere, we will all feel united. That is the movement that we have tried to launch in the country today. It's slowly picking up. Ramasetu project I took up only because I know that Karunanidhi selected this route because it would involve breaching the Ramasetu. The country that I have shown Ram his place, they rubbish Ram all the time. And I use this argument in court also. If you want to know the detailed argumentation about Ramasetu, I'd be happy to take it in the question time. But we have to have a Hindu mindset. Now, what does that mean? I have a book, you have some here, where I have described in great detail. But first of all, what is India? The identity of India. In this country, they are worrying about identity. So Professor Samuel Huntington of Harvard has written a book, Who We Are. And he says, all said and done, United States is a white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, English-speaking identity. And everybody else has a guest of the United States. This is Professor of Harvard. And he's not an ordinary professor, he's a very famous professor. Because the United States is worried now with all the Filipinos coming, Mexicans coming, the Asians coming. What is going to be the identity of this country? Our identity is very clear, it's much simpler. Because DNA has proved that we are all the same people. Both National Geographic and a variety of other researchers, there's one researcher who's in California, who's an Indian, who's done at the University of Southern California, done a tremendous amount of work on DNA. All we are the same, irrespective of caste. Whether we are Muslims, Christians, Hindus, except, the spectrum of DNA is the same throughout India. Complexion might vary because of the sun, pigmentation of the sun. It's got nothing to do with race, nothing to do with DNA. So if we are all the same, then what is India? India is a land of Hindus plus those others of other religion whose ancestors are Hindus. Whose ancestors are the Muslims? Whose ancestors are the Christians? They are Hindus. And the Muslims and the Christians should own up with pride this Hindu ancestry. If the Muslims say, no, I am a descendant of Ghazni or Gori, then go to Pakistan. You don't belong to India. But if you stay in India, you shouldn't have a voting right. We need to develop this identity. We need to ultimately dethrone, as Shankara did, Sanskrit as a language of communication. It can be done through Hindi by making the vocabulary Sanskritized. I sat with the Tamil dictionary produced by Madras University, which is Dravidian dominated. And that has 40% Sanskrit words, or common to Sanskrit. The Tamil scholars say, no, this is all Sanskrit borrowed from Tamil. I said, I don't mind, as long as it's common. 40% of the words. Once I remember I was in a meeting with Karunanidhi and he was telling me, Sanskrit Maharaj is Teriyad. I said, then why your name is Karunanidhi? Is it a Dravidian name? You say that your election symbol is Udayan Chinnam, Udayan Suryan Chinnam. I said, these are all Sanskrit words. Chinna is Sanskrit word. Tamil is full of Sanskrit. Of course, Malayalam has more, Karnataka has more, Kannada has more, but even Tamil has 40%. So teach the people the common words and make them, ultimately it has to come. This Dravidian word was used by Shankara, Adi Shankara first when he went to challenge Mandara Mishra. And they asked him, who are you? He said, I am Dravida Shishu, which means the child of the southern regional area. It has nothing to do with race. They say no, Brahmins are Aryans and others are Dravidian. Then I say, Rahul Dravid, is he a Brahmin or not a Brahmin? And furthermore, I don't think till 1,000 years ago, caste had anything to do with birth. The original idea of caste was devolution of power. What were the sources of power? Knowledge, weapons, money, and land. And the Hindu sages decided that none of these two, no two of these should be in anybody's hands. One hand. So if you had knowledge, then you didn't have weapons. You didn't have land, you didn't have wealth. If you had wealth, you didn't have weapons. If you had land, then you didn't have the right to teach and impart knowledge. And that is why if you adopted the discipline of that caste, you became of that caste. That's how Valmiki became a Maharishi. His parents were not Brahmins. Vedavyas's mother was a fisherwoman. And he became a Maharishi too. So Ramayana is written by a non-Brahmin and Mahabharata is written by a non-Brahmin. But they are both Maharishis. The Rishi of Rishis, Vishwamitra, was a Kshatriya. Kalidasa was a Adivasi, was a hunter from the forest community. But they are all Maharishis. In fact, if I were to think of a prominent Brahmin in our scriptures, it is Ravan. Ravan was a Brahmin. And these DK idiots didn't know that. And they were anti-Brahmin agitation, they were praising Ravana. Now they have stopped it because I have publicized that Ravan was a great Brahmin, Pandit Brahmin, but because of his ahankar, his ahambhav, he had to be destroyed. And we don't worship Ravan. Even today's Brahmins, those who call themselves Brahmins, they don't worship Ravan. They worship Ram, who is a Kshatriya. In fact, none of our gods are Brahmins. Krishna was a Yadava, Rama was a Kshatriya, like that. Or the caste couldn't be decided. So I think this caste system became irrelevant the moment it became connected with birth. People with 4 different castes, or forget caste altogether. We are Hindus first, and let us be Hindus last also. So therefore, this concept that we are indigenous to this area of India, we didn't come from outside, this Aryan Dravidian theory is totally bogus. And we regard this country as a land of Hindus and those others who acknowledge that their ancestors are Hindus. Because artificial intelligence, they have decided there's no need to invent a language which is computer savvy. Sanskrit is a computer savvy language, and therefore they have given up the research on a separate language and they adopted Sanskrit. That's why Sanskrit is being taught in a big way in this country. And we need to bring it back. Even if I don't know Sanskrit, my children can know Sanskrit. If my children don't know, then their grandchildren should know. And it's easy to teach, and ultimately that is the way to unite the nation further. So that is one requirement to fight terrorism. To be motivated by your acceptance. You have to have a law which says you cannot convert by inducement. You can convert if somebody individually wants to convert. If it's a collective conversion, then there must be inducement. And you have to investigate it. And this feeling people are developing in India because Congress government in Himachal Pradesh has enacted a law banning induced conversions. Veerbhadra Singh, who is the Chief Minister of Himachal, he told, I am not going to go by the opinion of Sonia Gandhi on this issue. I am going to go by what is required. The Christian missionaries are playing havoc in Laul Spiti area of Himachal, and therefore I am going to have this law. He's passed this law. So therefore, we need a law which prevents the forcible conversion or the conversion by inducement. Swami Jayendra Saraswati went to Dalits, he went to their temples, he gave them that. That is the main reason why he was targeted. Of course, Jayalalitha's good friend Sashikala did the murder. And having done the murder and the pressure from Sonia to do something about Jayendra Saraswati, Jayalalitha stupidly came to this conclusion and betrayed the religion by saving Sashikala and putting the blame on Jayendra Saraswati to meet the demand of Sonia Gandhi so that Sonia Gandhi doesn't prosecute her in disproportionate assets case and many other cases which are pending against her. I hope she realizes her mistake and does prayashchit, because our Hindu tradition, we do have a method by which we recover our own people who are lost to us. And that is called prayashchit or in Tamil prayashchitam. So, therefore, the integration of Hindu society by recognizing there is no caste or caste governance with birth, this will strengthen our basis. I think that would be perhaps the call of Brahmacharya. He one day told me that what we need to do is what Adi Shankara had said from the beginning, that we are one whole. Adi Shankara set up 4 mutts and one for himself, namely in Kanchi. And the idea was the unity of India. And he was very keen. Today, almost everyone admits that we want to deal with the problem of Pakistan, we have to have good relations with China. Today, not those days. Those days the Soviet Union was so upset when I went to China and came back that Kosygin came all the way from Moscow and demanded that time be given in Doordarshan. On 19th March 1979, Kosygin appeared on the television of India, Doordarshan, which was the only channel those days, and said, "My dear friends of India, be careful of the Chinese. They have betrayed you once, they have betrayed us. They are most undependable people. I do not agree with the government of the day," he said. "I don't agree with the Janata government that you should have normalized relations with China, that they are undependable people." That is the extent of hostility that is created. But today, you want to deal with Pakistan, get the neutrality of China, Pakistan is 5 minutes work. They say that when Pakistan was broken into two, Bangladesh and West Pakistan, then Pakistan should have been renamed as Pakistan, you know. What is Baki? But today it can go break into 5 in no time. Because Baluchis don't want to be part of it. Baluchis were never part of Pakistan. It was Nehru's weakness that he disregarded the call of the Baluchi leader and said, no, it is part of Pakistan. Baluchis never agreed. They were an independent country, and the British, before leaving, had made them an independent country. But the Pakistani army went and took it. Hindus decide that they will think as Hindus. They should demand of political parties a Hindu agenda. and they should come out and vote as Hindus for once. People say, why are they everybody appeasing Muslims and Christians? Because Muslims and Christians vote as Muslims and Christians. If Hindus decide tomorrow to vote as Hindus, you don't have to worry about these people. You don't have to have all Hindus also. 83% are Hindus. 40% get majority. In our system of elections, all you need is 40% vote and you will be the majority party. We need, what I say is that we need to regard the Hindu vote as sacred, as Swami Dayananda Saraswati has been repeatedly saying. We need a movement in which Hindus decide that for once to set right our problems, to bring the character of India back as a Hindustan country, a country of Hindus and those others whose ancestors are Hindus. That we need an instrument in a democracy. That instrument can only be, that weapon can be elections, and in elections we must all vote as Hindus. That is what, I'm not saying you vote for this party or that party, whichever party accepts a Hindu agenda, you should vote for that. That should be the approach that we should have. So, to meet the siege, if we go into the teachings of Paramacharya, which is documented now in the form of a book, you will see whatever I've said in various chapters, It was a great experience for me. For me, it was a totally unexpected experience. It happened because I saw his image suddenly come before me when I was reading. And sometimes he comes back in my dream. In the dreams, anything can happen. I remember I didn't have that much. I knew Swami Jayendra Saraswati very well. I knew Vijendra when he was not even a Shankaracharya. As a little boy, I went to Kerala to the ashram, and I found that Swami Jayendra Saraswati is there. So I said, let me stop and say hello to him. So I went inside, and he, as soon as he saw me, brought in about 14 boys and made them all stand. He said they're all learning Sanskrit and so on. He said, one of them I'm going to select as the successor Shankaracharya. Who do you think it should be? So I saw Vijendra Saraswati. I think he had a different name then. He had tejas on his face. I said, this boy looks as this. He's already cut out. He said, yes, I've already selected him. And it has been communicated to Paramacharya also. So I knew them very well. But after the Samadhi of Paramacharya, my connections, my frequency of going to the Shankara Math had been completely reduced. When this took place, I knew that Jayendra Saraswati, Swamigal and Jayalalitha and all had been meeting, and Sachikala had gone, and I was on the other side. So there were reasons for me not to go. But as I was returning from the United States, it was in November, and I remember I had gone to sleep because there was a nice seat which could almost double as a bed. And I got to sleep, and suddenly he came in my dream and said, Jana, wait ke batam tu pariyar. So that day I decided that go. And when I started speaking, already people are saying, oh no, there must be something in it. And that nobody wanted to speak. And those of you who spoke, Jayalalitha put cases on them. And so I began speaking. Jayalalitha didn't put any cases against me because she knows she puts one case on me, I'll put 10 on her. So therefore, there's that two bullies in a street. They have an area. They don't interact with each other. So you manage your So she puts a case, I'll put 10 cases on her. I'm nothing personal against her. I know her personally very well. I've not met her for the last 7 years after she went with Sonia Gandhi. I broke off with her at that time. But I do feel that this issue became so important for us. It is not Swami Jayendra Saraswati being targeted. It was Hinduism was being demeaned by this. And now you don't need any personal opinion whether the case is genuine or not. The Supreme Court, while considering the bail application, asked the Tamil Nadu government, give us all the evidence you have. And after that, the Supreme Court said, there is no prima facie basis for this case. We would be dismissing this case, but this is a bail application. Maybe the government of Tamil Nadu will come up with more evidence in the future, because they are still in the investigation stage. But as of now, because it has no prima facie basis, we are giving bail. This is the Supreme Court. Amongst the things that they said, amongst the things the police had said to the Supreme Court is that there are 32 letters which Shankar Raman, the murdered man, has written, of which some of them are addressed to Jayendra Saraswati. And therefore shows that, and they show a lot of hostility. And therefore there is proof of hostility. So the Supreme Court said, give us all 32. Why are you giving us only those select letters which were, let's see who all is addressed to. One letter is addressed to Sachikala. That unless you return the diamond necklace which you stole from Varadaraj Rumal and replaced it with a imitation, I shall go public and make an announcement. It appears that he was a blackmailer, perhaps. He should have anyway gone to the police saying that Sachikala has stolen the diamond necklace. So why no case on Sachikala? Because of that letter. If you can have a case on Jayendra Saraswati because of those letters, why not against Sachikala? Similarly, they need to have put him in jail, in like a common criminal in Vellore jail. Shoaib Abdullah was accused of treason, and he was kept in a lovely bungalow in Kodaikanal, and he was kept in dark bungalow. Even Veerappan they were planning to put in a dark bungalow, in a circuit house. But of course he was shot dead on the road. But they had prepared one circuit house for him. What is the compulsion that you have to send the person to jail? There is no even compulsion even to arrest a person. Under the law, cognizable offences, the police have an authority to arrest for investigation purposes if the person is unknown and he can melt into some crowd and disappear. Nobody can say that Swami Jayendra Saraswati can melt into a crowd and disappear. So they could have kept him in the ashram, in the mutt, and said, please don't leave the mutt. We want you to be available for investigation. But they have put him deliberately with the criminals. I visited that jail. I went and saw to Periva. And that's all he told me. He said, I am only upset about one thing. And what would Paramacharya have thought? That's all that I'm upset about. Because he was in tears when I saw him. There was no need to keep him. It was to demean Hinduism. It's in a sophisticated way. In the past, we have had invasions. But now, we are not having physical invasions. We are having mental brainwashing. And we have to break out of that brainwashing, which is the reason why I wrote this book. And I hope any of you have any questions, any contrary opinion, anything, you would be pleased to ask me that. Thank you very much.
Samuel Huntington.
Yeah.
He had written a book called The Clash of Civilizations.
Yes.
And in that book he talks about alliances towards the end. He talks about Hindu-India aligning itself with the West.
Yeah.
Is what we see in Iraq today an indicative of the conflict to come? Is it a political conflict or is it a religious conflict? And what should India's position be with that? I mean, do you agree with Huntington's thesis, first of all?
Well, we have a major problem with Islam because the educated Muslim has suddenly decided that Islam's missionary work is extremely important, and therefore it is better to die for it than allow, it not do something about its propagation. So we have a problem, and I don't believe in this theory about a good Muslim and a bad Muslim. A Muslim in majority will never be the same as a Muslim in minority. You have to understand that you have to understand, you go back, not to Quran alone, because Quran is not Islam alone. People quote Quran to say how much peace, this, that. No, you have to read Sirah, the biographical part of Muhammad's life, which is also considered part of Islamic theology. And Shariat. These three together have to be taken together. And the educated people have absorbed it, and that is why you find most of the terrorists are not poor people who don't have employment and all that. They are people who are very well to do, and they are leading the terrorist movement. So I would certainly say that the Islamic leaders today identify Jews, Christians, and Hindus as the common enemy. This is Osama bin Laden's public statement, not once but several times. So that doesn't mean that we take it out on our Muslims. We have to bring them around. And I told you one way to bring them around is this. And I would say 80 to 90% of Indian Muslims are people who want to live in India, who privately acknowledge that their ancestors are Hindus. In fact, they are good friends of yours. They are even identified, whether it was from this part of India or that part of India, and so on. M.J. Akbar had the courage to write a book in which it's about blood brothers or something, which he said my grandfather was a Rajput. And we converted because there was no other way to survive. So in India, we must try to co-opt the Muslim while being absolutely clear that you are not going to submit to them. This capitulation that took place when BP Singh's daughter, when Mohammad Mufiz Saeed's daughter was kidnapped and they let 5 terrorists out, and later on by Vajpayee when he let Muhammad Azhar and 2 others out on Kandahar, that is the way to encourage them. I also was a minister, and in my time the person present, the Water Resources Minister Saifuddin Sosa's daughter was kidnapped by JKLF. And we didn't release a single person, and yet the girl was not only released, but she was put on a auto rickshaw and dropped in the residence of Saifuddin Sos, because we identified the organization JKLF, and we found that 3 of its office bearers are living in London. So we sent our agents to London with Israeli help, and that's why I think Parmacharya must have told me about Israel. And we visited those 3 people and said, you will be all shot dead here if that girl is not released. In 48 hours. But in 24 hours they released her. You cannot capitulate to terrorists. If they do violence in Kashmir, remove Article 370 and ask your 1 million of your 1 crore ex-servicemen, here is 5 lakh rupees, go and settle down in Kashmir. If they throw bombs in your temples, send your army and take over Kashi Vishwanath, that mosque next to Kashi Vishwanath. If they still continue, then take over Vrindavan, Krishna temple, where the mosque is next door, which Aurangzeb deliberately destroyed. So you have to retaliate. And that retaliation has to come. The only problem is that the United States is a very cost-benefit oriented society. The moment their work is over or they find the cost is going against them, they have a habit of quitting. They quit in Vietnam, they are now talking about quitting in Iraq. So I feel that in fact, I'm convened a conference in memory of the advice given to me by Parmacharya, a conference which Harvard University and Tsinghua University in Beijing are co-sponsoring in Cochin in January, where the topic is India, China, United States triangle. Which 2 countries should be against the third? Of course, the ideal thing would be that India and China be together and have a contractual relationship with the United States. Contractual relationship with the United States is workable because they keep contracts very when the first Gulf War was going on, the Americans came to me because the Prime Minister sent them to me saying that they wanted their planes coming in from Philippines to land and refuel in India and then go to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. So I said, what will you give me? They said, will you charge so much for landing charges for commercial flights? We'll give you 3 times that. I said, 3 times that? I don't, that's peanuts. So then they said, what do you want? I said, I want $2 billion from the IMF without any conditions. They said, how is that possible? IMF is an international organization. I said, don't bluff me. 87% of the voting power in the IMF is the United States. So if you want, you can do it. Then he said, but today is Friday. I said, yes, it's Friday morning. In America, it is Thursday night. So you got the whole of Friday. Have it on Monday, otherwise don't come back. On Monday, I had $2 billion and we gave them the rights. That's the way to deal with the United States, I believe. I do think that the Jews and the Hindus and the Christians are in the same plight, but I think Hindus and Jews can easily combine. And even in China today, they are talking about harmonious society with Buddhist values. So it is possible that over a period of time China may evolve. And I do think that there is a big grain of truth in what Huntington said. But I think the more important thing for us is to remember that after the clash of civilization is going to come the clash of religions. And there Hinduism and Christianity are going to be pitted against each other. I went once to Mermatur Aligarh. I don't know how many of you have heard of him. He's got a huge following. And I was speaking to him about all this. He said, now our mantram kudukrangu. I said, what? He said, I said, no, I'm not telling
you. Kind of being talked in the same room. It's always a very debatable thing. There is no one right answer. And as a politician, who's also been very closely involved with that religion, I'm looking at what is it that the youngsters of today can really do to take from this, because it's great, we have all these big gatherings, we talk about it, and at the end of it, we just go back home and status quo, there's nothing that has changed. What is it that you would say is one thing that can be done by the current generation, including, I'm talking about up to 50, 55, whatever, whoever can really do that. Age is not really a barrier if you really want to take something new and push it forward. What is it that can be done instead of just always talking about the clashes between religions or with the political leaders, whether in the form of film or whatever, because we don't get to know what exactly is going on in India or other places. We all know that everything has a political agenda, which is a person wants to get elected or they want to stay in power at whatever expense it is. So if it is currently religion, they do it. If it's caste system, they do it. Whatever it takes. So what is it that can be done, or what do you foresee based on your experience and your expertise in this field? What is it that the current generation can really take to make a difference? Even if it means taking a small pebble and making a difference to what needs to be done.
Well, you see, the question is, if you have a democracy, you will have a political agenda. You can't escape from it. If you have a vote and you're going to exercise it, you have to have a political agenda. Otherwise, how will you know how to cast your vote? Unless you go and cast your vote because somebody gave you 1,000 rupees. You have to have a political opinion. The question is not that. The question is whether these problems exist, and the question is what's the answer. If one religion has decided that they are going to fight tooth and nail, India has not harmed any religion. In fact, when we were 100% Hindus, we welcomed the Jews and the Parsis, and everywhere else they disappeared or were persecuted. But India did not. India suffered 1,000 years of foreign rule. but we still survive. So it's not a question that it's a clash of religions at all, as far as the Hindu-Muslim is concerned. Question of clash of religion comes only with Christianity because they want to do conversion. If they didn't want to do conversion, we have no problem with Christianity. Yes?
The flip side to that argument, I would say, is we have had a very historical model in the sense that we welcome people.
Where?
Everywhere.
Yes.
Into the country.
Yes.
That's our civilization, that's our culture.
Yes.
We take pride in that. We give them what they want. We treat them as guests, and then we are happy if they are going to rule us. And then
that is your distorted version. I don't think we are willing slaves, that we are happy if they
but we are
rule
not
us.
ready to fight.
That is not true either. Look at Islam. In Persia, 100% Islam. They were originally Zoroastrians. They became 100%. Whole of Middle East, the whole of Europe became 100% Christian. But 1,000 years of both Islam and Christianity put together sequentially, even then undivided India was 75% Hindu. The fighting was done by Vijayanagara Empire, it was done by Shivaji, it was done by Marathas, it was done by Rani Jhansi, it was done by Rana Pratap, it was done by Kattabomman, it was done by Rani Chennamma in Karnataka. Anybody who knows Karnataka history, it was done by a whole series of people. Unfortunately, most people don't know this because our history books, there will be one chapter for each Mughal emperor, but Vijayanagara Empire, one paragraph. It ruled for 300 years, the Vijayanagara Empire, and covered more area than Aurangzeb did at the peak of his power. So I won't go into that. Let's not go into a diversion. I come to a central point. What's the one thing that any youngster can do? Go and learn Sanskrit. That's all. Everything else will fall in place automatically. If you can't learn Sanskrit, make someone else learn Sanskrit in a younger generation to you. But learn Sanskrit, all these things that I tell you of a new perspective of your history will automatically come to you.
Shanghai, if you look at the city, it's very clean, everything runs very smoothly, excellent public transportation. If you look at a city like
But you have not the water in Shanghai, no?
Right. And then if you look at a city
It's
like
not
Bangalore,
clean. That water is not clean.
right. And then you see Bangalore, there are pockets where it's very modern, someplace that I would assume that Americans would live there and be just fine. But then there are some times where the decision-making process is so slowed down because of the red tape and bureaucracy that sometimes something like a road that needs to be built is delayed far longer than it should be. So you think that the unilateral system in China and then the democratic system in India, how do you see those clashes and which one do you see coming out ahead in the long run economically?
Well, if you want a detailed answer, read my book. It's called Financial Architecture and Economic Development of China and India, which is published in India, but you go to Amazon.com, you'll get it. The short answer is, if you want a Shanghai in Bangalore or a Shanghai in Bombay, all you have to do is make one policy decision, and that is that FDI in real estate will be permitted, and that the land will be given for 99-year-old lease without any cost. That's exactly what China did. None of the buildings in Shanghai, none of the buildings in Beijing are built with Chinese money. They are built with foreign money. And because China has said that the land will be given to you at 99-year lease, you don't have to buy the land. And you can bring FDI, you can charge any rent you want, you can do what you like. Are you ready to have that policy? Then you will get it in no time. You don't need to give up democracy for that. Just change policy. Second, many of the things that are happening in China are not being reported. India has a disadvantage. Everything in India is developed. I asked one question, why is it that India has never had a famine? We had food shortages, but we never had a famine. China had one famine in 1959 to 61 where 32 million people died. 32 million people died. This is not my estimate, this is Chinese government estimate. But of course they didn't say it then, they are saying it now. That during Mao Zedong's madness on Great Leap Forward, this is what was the result. Chinese financial system is so brittle that one thing going wrong, it will have a blow up. It's not unexpected. The whole world thought that Argentina, Chile and Brazil will be the future developed countries of the world. In 1981 they had a blow up, they have never recovered from it. East Asia was thought to be a great, they called them East Asia tigers. In fact, World Bank wrote a book saying East Asia is doing so well because they got their basics right and everybody should learn from them. Within 2 years of writing that book, East Asia had a blow up in 1997 and has not recovered from it because they didn't get their basics right. China's financial system, their banks are bankrupt, they have all kinds of restrictions which have put them into great difficulty. For example, the Americans are going on hammering revalue. Why the Americans are doing this? Because they know that if you go on saying that, the world will think that China will revalue and all kinds of money will come, speculative money will enter China. And then one day the Chinese, they will realize that China is not going to revalue and all that money will come out and there will be a crisis. That's how they created the East Asian crisis also. They knew that their financial system is brittle and they found that Japanese were going on buying everything up in the United States, including Rockefeller Center. So they raised the interest rate of the bond market and all the hot money came running out and they collapsed. So the financial system is so brittle in China, it can have a blowout. India has a problem with this financial system, largely because our state government budgets and central government budgets both are bankrupt. Even the central government budget is bankrupt. And we're going to have a crisis in a couple of years on that. But India has got institutions which will correct for it and renew itself, and we have the capacity to throw out the leaders who do not perform. Governments have changed in the past. After all, the economic reform came because Rajiv Gandhi's government was defeated, VP Singh's government was defeated. And some of us came into office and we were able to do it. And Narasimha Rao, of course, deserves the full credit for it because he had the political sagacity to get it implemented. So I would say, how do we compare India and China? Well, I mean, if you ask me at a point of a gun to say which is doing better, I would say India is doing better. But both India and China have problems, and both of them are going to have a crisis within the next 2-3 years. We have remained a democracy, and that's no mean achievement considering our 1 billion people. We held elections regularly except for a brief period during the emergency when our constitution fundamental rights were suspended. But we have demonstrated to the world that democracy is part and parcel of our society, whereas in other countries, especially our neighborhood, which is also supposed to have the same history as ours, they have not been able to have democracy. And I certainly think that the main reason we have democracy in India is because we are 83% Hindu, and there is a Hindu ethos which is very conducive for questioning, for decentralization, for doing your own thing and having your own opinion. And this ethos has contributed very heavily for the fruits that democracy has in India. And it is this Hindu religion, culture that we need to defend, because if it disappears, there will be no democracy in India. To Richard Nixon. India has not broken, and India has remained one, and this is also a great achievement, and this also I attribute to the common cultural links that Hindu society, Hindu religion has been able to afford. And finally, we have demonstrated leadership in information technology biotechnology, pharmaceuticals. India is a growing country, and so there's much to celebrate. But there's also hemorrhaging going on. And I would like to speak to you today. This is an Indian audience. I'd like to speak to you about the hemorrhaging that is going on in India. Because praising ourselves amongst ourselves is not necessary. And the hemorrhaging has taken in the form of the Hindu society being under siege. Hindu society is now, but for a problem I had with Mrs. Indira Gandhi. I was a professor, I was a junior professor at Harvard, I became an assistant professor, associate professor. Then the Indian Institute of Technology offered me a full professorship at a very young age, 29, which is unprecedented in India. And I accepted it and went back to India. But very soon I found that the ideology that Mrs. Gandhi was propagating was, and I went to the hut where he was sitting, and I appeared just like that. There were other people also standing. And then he looked at me and he got up and went inside. So I didn't know, something about me must have upset him, that's why he went inside. So I started to leave. Who were looking after Samacharya came running, said, Perivar on the Kupura. So I went back. So he asked me, how did you leave without, he asked me in Tamil, so I saw you, you saw me and you went inside, so I thought you didn't want to see me. So therefore I decided to leave. No, I went inside to get this piece of paper. And he gave it to somebody, gave it to me. I opened it, and it was a question answer with my photograph in. Those days there was an Indian Express magazine called Dinamani Kadir or something. I forget what it was. And the question was that Subramanian Swamy is regarded as a hero of emergency. Is he a Tamilian? So the answer is yes, he is from Sholo Andan. So it's from Tamil Nadu. He's from Tamil Nadu. So he asked me, Nidana is there? So I said yes. Then he said, now you can go. First meeting. And second meeting happened after about a year, pretty away, and spent at least an hour and a half with me, speaking about everything political. But he made it clear that he normally doesn't speak politics. And but he's making an exception. And I took that to mean that I should not give it in the newspapers as many others are doing. And he traced the whole Indian history so magnificently for me in a short while. He even explained to me that we should oppose E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar at the brain level, he said, not physically. Because he is one man and he has turned, he is so he told me, your job is to work on ideas in politics. And you do what you think is right. Don't chase position, don't chase money. When it's required, both will come. I must say, when people said that I dare to stand and dare to speak, it's that original inspiration which is guiding me. Because I found, when I've been in difficulty, money has come. I found when the Soviet, pro-Soviet ideology, and India needed, according to me, a market economy. And I recall that I had seen that picture in the room of one of the Indian students who had invited me to his place for lunch as a professor. In America, it's very common for professors to go for lunch with students. And I remember that photograph. So it was in my mind that someday I must go and see Paramacharya. And it happened in 1977 election. There was a Tamil Nadu election for the assembly after the parliament election in which Janata Party came to power. And I am now the sole surviving founding member of the Janata Party, because everybody else left it. I am the only one who has not left it. And but I remember that I was campaigning and I was passing through Kanchipuram, and there was a crowd. It was not in the Kanchi Mutt, but it was in a village a little away, maybe 20 kilometers away. And there was a small hut and there was a big crowd, lots of cars. So I asked my people, what's going on here? Then they gave me the name. They said, Paramacharya's here. That's why everybody's here. So I said, oh, then I want to see you.